Hello there, this is Dana Arcuri from DanaArcuri.com, and I am an author, speaker, survivor, and advocate. Welcome to my channel, and thank you so much for joining me. Happy Good Friday to you, and I hope you have an awesome Easter weekend if you celebrate it. For those who do celebrate Easter, or for those who just may enjoy this springtime and all the glorious weather. So we're going to talk about something that is a heavy, heavy topic. It is called the devastating toxic family legacy. And I'm going to be the first to say that this is an extremely complicated topic. It's a difficult topic. It's painful. It's tragic. And as I was doing research last night, I literally felt sick to my stomach. And so even though I've been 3 years on this healing journey and no contact with my own toxic family unit, this doesn't mean that it's always easy for me to talk about these hard to discuss subjects. There are times where I feel like my heart is just shattered into a dozen pieces. And there are times on the healing journey when I need to create safe space for myself alone, on my own terms, to heal the best way I know how to heal. Solitude can be a really beautiful thing sometimes. Times where you're practicing self-care and you're really having sacred space where you could be in the moment, be true to yourself, and just let yourself feel your human emotions without any shame, without any judgment, and to just give yourself that extra nurturing and tender loving care to get through some hard times when you are recovering from the toxic family dynamics. So let's move forward and talk about, hey, what is a legacy? Let's talk about this. So according to collinsdictionary.com, quote unquote, they say that a legacy is defined as a gift by will, especially of money or personal property. A legacy is also known as something handed down or received from an ancestor or predecessor. Legacy is also known as your birthright, your endowment, an inheritance, and tradition. Now, today's focus is not on money. I really believe that there are so many other things to talk about that are so much more important and valuable and necessary to discuss that are crucial for me to talk about today. So that is what I'm going to be focusing on, different dynamics involved with the toxic family legacy and how this may impact you and your own children and grandchildren. And so a toxic legacy is a destructive pattern of harmful, painful, and damaging behaviors. They have been handed down from one generation to the next one. It's when one or more parents, plus there could be other relatives, who repeatedly interact in a family system in a very unhealthy, destructive manner. These dysfunctional family members may imprint their own children with toxic behaviors, words, and actions. So it's really, really tragic what happens when we start looking into like the family tree and intergenerational trauma and various forms of abuse within the home. It is just absolutely soul crushing when we get statistics, we get the facts, we gain insight, we educate ourselves. And there are times it hurts. All I can say is, yes, it cuts like a knife. And I will be the first to say it really does hurt. But there is hope for healing. And that is why I share these very vulnerable, authentic messages on my YouTube channel, because I'm here for you, my friends. I'm here for you. I support you. And I want to help you along your own trauma recovery journey. So we have to understand that intergenerational trauma significantly impacts the structure of each family. Instead of children growing up and feeling secure and happy and cared for and respected and loved and free to be who they are raised instead in a very poisonous environment, feeling rejected, emotionally abandoned, criticized, unloved, and unworthy. So we're going to move forward now and talk about the 10 devastating results of a toxic family legacy. And so number one is lack of trust. Trust is such a big thing. And a lot of people like to throw this around all over the social media and say, oh, you have trust issues. Oh boy, when we really do a deep dive into psychology with intergenerational trauma and abuse, especially narcissistic abuse, we can really appreciate that trust is crushed. It's dismantled because of the family structure that is broken. We have to understand that from early on, these innocent children who were abused by their parent, siblings, and or other relatives did not learn how to trust. They did not learn how to build healthy boundaries, especially with their family. And there were no role models. Their role model might have been that the dad was part of the mafia or that the mom was a narcissist. It could have been that one or more parents were having a secret affair. It could have been that someone was extremely physically, emotionally, or sexually abusive to one or more children within that home. It's extremely damaging to everyone involved. So they unconditionally learn that their own mother and their own father and grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, etc., are not safe. As their narcissistic parent bullies them and manipulates them, they start to question their own selves. They may second guess their own reality, their own sanity. They may have a lack of trust because it is a normal and common trauma response. So the issue is not, oh, this person just doesn't know how to trust. No, this issue is people betrayed them. People hurt them. The people who were supposed to love them damaged them. And that is why they may have challenges with trust in their adult years. Number two is silence. Oh boy, do we know about silence. Raise your hand if you were silenced by your toxic family. I know I was. So the lethal family system has a code of silence. Shh. Speak no evil. See no evil. That's what they say. Oh, pretend everything's fine. It doesn't matter if there's any evil going on. Oh, we're going to pretend everything's fine. So the abused child will become withdrawn, quiet. They may be a very shy child, very timid, because they've been told time and time again not to speak, that they don't matter, and there could be repercussions if they do break the silence. So if this child or even teenager dares to speak out and protest the unfairness of the abuse within the family unit, they will oftentimes experience corporal punishment. So they learn that speaking out and telling the truth means they're going to be beat up, smacked, they're going to be punished harshly, and it's just a learned experience where they then learn to be silent. It's really like self-preservation. So as a child then matures and becomes a grown adult, that is changing the dynamics of the situation. Now it's a situation where silence will not keep you safe. Silence will not prevent the abuse from happening. And so silence can steal your voice. It can take your life hostage. And it can actually keep you in a vicious cycle where you're going around and around and around, and you're being abused, you're being manipulated. There's a lot of gaslighting, a lot of retaliation and triangulation, and you just can't seem to be able to find your voice and speak up. And there could be fear involved, which is very legitimate. So fear is valid when it comes to speaking the truth. And when it comes to trust, and when it comes to, owning everything that happened and telling everybody what happened, there are situations where children do speak out and they are told, no, that is not true. So there could be people who minimize them, ignore them, not believe them. And the child also then learns they can't trust adults because adults don't even listen. Number three is codependency. So another sign of a toxic family legacy is they leave the family with this mark, and this mark is like a scar, and it's codependent relationships. So a toxic home goes hand in hand with codependent relationships with your parents, with your siblings, with your relatives, with your friends, with your teachers, and with future intimate partners once you are into a more mature adult life. So according to Merriam-Webster.com, quote unquote, codependency is a psychological condition or a relationship in which a person is controlled or manipulated by another person who is affected with a pathological condition. And the interesting thing about codependence is that there are times, we're not even aware that it's happening. I know when I was a child and a teenager and a young adult, I was completely unaware that my mom really wanted me to be dependent on her, that my mom created a codependent relationship with me. So it wasn't until I was much, much older where I came to see this very clearly and then started taking steps forward to break the codependency with my mother. And so there is a quote by a woman who is a doctor, and her name's, I thought it was a female, but I'm not 100%. The name is Sean Megan Byrne. From my understanding, it's a female. So this author wrote a book called Unhealthy Helping, a psychological guide for overcoming codependence and alien and other dysfunctional helping. And she has a code that is just spot on about codependent relationships. So this woman says codependence is an imbalanced relationship pattern where one partner assumes a high cost giver-rescuer role and the other is the taker-victim role. Of course, you don't get to choose your role. I can tell you, you could bank on it that the narcissistic parent is going to give you the role of scapegoat whether you like it or not. Next is number 4. So another devastating result of the toxic family legacy is victim blaming, is victim shaming. So what happens is there's a lot of blame shifting. The narcissistic parent and or siblings dump all of the shame and blame onto the black sheep of the family. So they accuse you of being the problem. They claim it's your fault. You deserved it. And the narcissistic person and flying monkeys, they'll never take responsibility or accountability for their actions, words, and behaviors. So a lot of times we need to move through to acceptance that we can't change them nor their behaviors. Dr. Brené Brown, oh, I love her. If you're not familiar with her, check out her TED Talks, check out all of her books. She is just amazing. So Brené Brown is the world's leading researcher on shame, vulnerability, courage, and empathy. One of her powerful quotes says, "Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, and taken care of." So if we can share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive. So shame can't survive where there is compassion, love, and empathy. And this is why healing begins by you and me offering ourselves compassion, empathy, love, nurturing, to be present and to just embrace ourselves in this healing journey and understand that we do not need to claim this shame and blame because it's not for us to carry. Number 5 is perfectionism and control. So due to the malignant narcissist being extremely controlling and they abuse their power, especially in the family structure, it's common for their children to grow up feeling inadequate, helpless, and powerless. In addition, in most cases, the abused children feel the need to be perfect in order to win the love, acceptance, and approval of the narcissistic parent, as well as the toxic siblings and other relationships. So there are times, these kids feel the need to be perfect, and it's because their parent is expecting them to be perfect. And it's very unrealistic. It's very unrealistic, and it is a form of abuse. So number 6 is adverse childhood experiences. For those who are unaware, it's called ACEs. So A for adverse, C for childhood, E for experiences. And I took the little quiz. If you want, just go online and look for ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. There's a free quiz, and you could find out your score. If your score is below 4, so say it's 0 to 4, that is on the low end. That means you had a better upbringing, less drama, less trauma. It doesn't mean there was never abuse, but it looks a lot healthier, that you may have had a more secure childhood. Now, if your score is higher than 4, so say it's 5 all the way up till number 10, this isn't good. There's going to be a great long-term consequence for what took place in your home and what happened to you. So let's chat about this. The most deadly impact of the toxic family legacy is to cause severe long-term damage to children. According to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, they say, quote unquote, adverse childhood experiences are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. ACEs can include violence, abuse, sexual assault, and growing up in a family with mental health or substance abuse problems. And so the toxic stress from ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences, can change the brain in the child's development and affect how the body responds to stress. So the adverse childhood experiences are linked to devastating long-term results such as chronic health problems, autoimmune diseases, cancer, heart problems, mental illness, complex PTSD as well as PTSD, addictions, and trauma. Number 7 is probably the most soul-crushing of all. It's called betrayal trauma. So when you're growing up, you expect to be supported, protected, loved. There's gentleness, nurturing. You're taken care of by your family. However, in an abusive home, there's betrayal of an innocent child's trust of his parents or her parents, siblings, and relatives. Physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect, as well as invalidation, scars the child with a deep sense of betrayal. Your core sense of who you are can be destroyed when this takes place. It undermines your self-confidence and self-esteem, as well as your belief system. So you can end up growing up and thinking that this is a very scary, unsafe world. Therefore, your trust is shattered. So betrayal trauma is real. It definitely impacted my life as a child, as a teenager, and as a grown adult. I'm still picking up the pieces and mending, and I believe that I will be healing for as long as I am still breathing on earth. Number 8 is addictions. So some people are very well acquainted to what takes place with the dysfunctional, toxic family unit and how there's a correlation of trauma, abuse, and addiction. So we're going to talk about that. So what happens is, Dr. Gabor Mate, I just love him. Check him out. He's on YouTube. Oh, he's just a breath of fresh air. He has so much knowledge. So he's an author. He's a doctor. He's very well acquainted with addictions and anger and also, trauma. So there's so many different symptoms that can crop up in someone's life when they are going through some really challenging times, especially with a toxic family. And so you could grow up and not really connect the dots. You may not understand, like, why are you overspending? Why are you gambling? Why are you a sexaholic? Why are you an alcoholic, or you're into drugs? And it could be street drugs, but it also could be prescription drugs. And there could be a situation where you become physically dependent on drugs or some form of chemical. So Dr. Gabor Mate has an intriguing quote, and he says, "Not all addictions are rooted in abuse or trauma, but I believe they can all be traced to painful experiences. A hurt is at the center of all addictive behaviors. It is present in the gambler, the internet addict, the compulsive shopper, the sexaholic, and the workaholic. The wound may not be as deep and the ache not as excruciating, and it may even be entirely hidden, but it is there." So the trauma is buried deep, and you may not even be aware of it. You may be in a situation where you find yourself addicted to something, and trust me, there's a whole lot of things. I mean, there are people who have eating disorders and various kinds of addictions, a shopaholic and so forth. Look at all the men who are addicted to pornography. This is a sex addiction. This is unhealthy. And it really does destroy relationships. So for people who think pornography is a great thing, no, it violates women. It exploits children and women and men, and it is very devastating. So we must understand this. Number 9 is deep-rooted anger is another trait of the toxic family legacy. So if you are the black sheep of your toxic family, or you may be the scapegoat, you may experience anger. There may be times where you feel like there's this rage and it's bubbling up inside of you, and you're just like, what's going on? Why am I so angry all the time? Why am I flipping out, freaking out, and having like emotional dysregulation? So you may not have connected the dots, but understand this. Based on your childhood and your history of being abused, bullied, manipulated by your toxic family, including your parents and siblings, you may have what I refer to as righteous anger. So considering everything that you have suffered and endured, and trust me, I know so many of you have suffered and endured so much pain, and it's excruciating, it's heartbreaking, it's tragic. You've shared your stories with me. And so I will be the first to say that this is righteous anger. You have every right to be ticked off that your father, your mother, your siblings, or whoever it may have been, abused you, bullied you, manipulated you, smeared you, and aimed to hurt you and hurt you bad. So we can understand that part of healing is moving through grief. So in the book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, he says that the two very vital components to healing trauma and these very narcissistic relationships, number 1, do the grief work. Number 2, allow yourself to feel the anger. So you could find productive, safe ways to express your anger. Some people will exercise. They'll just work out. I'm talking heavy duty working out. You're just perspiring. You're just sweating, but it feels good. It feels good because you're getting those feel good endorphins going. Someone else might beat on a pillow. Someone else might get into boxing. Another person might go swimming. Someone else just might cry it out. For some people, crying's super therapeutic, and it works even with the anger. So maybe at first you could have a safe person, whether it's a therapist, whether it is a certified trauma recovery coach, or a good friend, someone very, very trustworthy, who will allow you and give you the sacred space to just scream, yell, cuss, swear, and let it loose. This is actually what Pete Walker says is very necessary to heal trauma. So I am a big believer that there are productive ways to release the anger, this pent up rage, and understand that it's very normal to feel angry. So please, please, please do not feel ashamed. No pointing your fingers at anyone and saying, oh, anger's bad. Oh, you're going to go to hell. Nope. I don't want to hear your preaching, man. I know a lot about trauma and I know a lot about the grief work, and anger is a stage of grief. And so if you want to heal, give yourself permission to feel all human emotions, including sadness, anger, frustration, sorrow, etc., etc. Next is that the National Center for PTSD confirms the link between anger and trauma. So they said anger is often a large part of a survivor's response to trauma. It is a core piece of the survival response in human beings. Remember now, a lot of people are in survival mode. They're in survival mode and they're just trying to make it out alive. And anger helps us cope with life stresses by giving us energy to keep going in the face of trouble. Yet anger can create major problems with people if we don't know how to handle it and manage it in a very safe, productive manner. So if you want to learn more, I say go online, check it out. Check out all the different positive ways, the safe ways to try to release that inner anger and grief within you. Next is number 10. So this is our last one, people. So broken relationships and going no contact is part of the devastating toxic family legacy. So it is no surprise that when you are raised in a dysfunctional home with destructive relationships, where this family unit has ritual abuse, you can experience one or more broken relationships within that family unit. So it might be you and your dad called it quits. It's just not working out. It could be you and your mother. It could be you and your entire family. It could just be you and your sibling. Maybe they were a bully. Maybe they physically hurt you. Maybe they mentally abused you, and on and on and on it goes. So you can understand that there's many people that could be involved in a broken relationship, which can lead you to have to make some big decisions about where you are headed. If you gray rock, if you go full no contact, there's a lot of big decisions. And, for people who say, hey, Dana, what do I do? What do I do? I can't tell you what to do. As a future certified trauma recovery coach, my job, when you look at all of my policies, and once I do complete this program, I'll have a list of everything I can do and everything I can't do. But as a trauma recovery coach, I can't tell you what to do. Only you can determine what is best for you. I could give you tools to help you and equip you. And the focus is always client-centered. It's not going to be about all of the horrible people. It's going to be about you. What is best for you? What is healthy for you? And what do you want to do? So I can't give people advice, and I'll never say, leave this person or don't leave this person. Instead, I'm going to ask you, what's your gut instinct? What do you want to do? What do you think you should do? And we might dive deep into being curious about what it could look like if you did give yourself some sacred space from the toxic family unit in which I could emotionally support you. But I will never, never tell someone what to do. That's not what a coach does. A coach is there to be your mentor. A coach is there to listen. A coach is there to be that safe space for you, that I'm going to be there to lift you up. I'm going to be there to validate you. So please know this in advance. So we can understand that going no contact's a hard decision, and it's up to each person. It's very, very personal. It's up to only you, and it's nobody else's decision. So nobody told me what to do. I had to decide in 2018 what was best for me. And I don't regret it for 1 minute. But remember that's my life. That's my family history. My situation and your situation may be so different. I was abused physically, sexually, and mentally as a child, as a teenager. And there was even, sexual trauma as an adult with my brother-in-law. So I have a lot of real traumatic things that I've experienced, which can, of course, explain why I went no contact. But just keep an open mind that everyone's decision is very personal and only you can make it. So another name for going no contact is called estrangement. A recent British survey defines family estrangement as the breakdown of supportive relationships between family members. The heartbreak of family estrangement is that those who are supposed to support you don't. Those who should be on your side aren't. And you're basically left to wing it on your own. You find out, after the betrayal and the gaslighting and the manipulation and the retaliation and the hoovering and all the crazy making with the flying monkeys and the malignant narcissist, you find out real fast that you're isolated, you're alone, and you have to make important decisions. And so we can understand that in this British study, I thought this was pretty enlightening and interesting, very intriguing information. They said that over 50% of those people who were estranged from at least one parent said that they were the ones to cut off the contact. And when asked why they went no contact with this parent, the estranged adult child stated, quote unquote, "We could never have a functional relationship ever again." Wow, I totally get it. Whether you have been gray rock or full no contact with your toxic family, you may have dozens of logical reasons why you made this decision. And remember, it's personal. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to argue. It is what it is. And you do what you have to do to keep safe, because when it comes to domestic violence and rape and incest and all the different things that could go on in a very dysfunctional family, at some point when it's really violent, and we're talking life-threatening people, you may need to get the police involved. You may need to get child welfare involved. There may be a lot of different things legally you may need to do to stay safe or to keep your children safe. So in my personal experience with my dysfunctional family, I went no contact with my narcissistic mother, my toxic siblings, and all of my relatives in 2018. And I believed that after spending a lifetime, we're talking over 50 years, people, of chronic bullying, gaslighting, manipulation, triangulation of relationships, jealous siblings, vengeful siblings who were instigating, who were stalking me, who were spreading lies and rumors and smearing my name all over the internet, and then sending their family to follow me, to stalk me, to spy on all my social media pages. We're talking ongoing psychological abuse. And back in 2018, I had enough. I said, I'm done. It doesn't take like a brain scientist, a rocket scientist. It doesn't take, a college degree to figure out that's a really unhealthy relationship. They're very unstable people. This is not healthy for me. This isn't healthy for my children. And I'm really blessed that my adult children were the ones to help me wake up to the truth about my own family. They were the ones who said, "Mother, do you not see this? They don't care about you. They don't love you. You don't matter to them. Why are you in a relationship with them?" So I am so thankful that I listened. I took the time to validate what my children said to me, to listen to them, to reflect on it, to pray about it, to meditate, to spend a long, long time making a big decision to cut the ties for once and for all. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it for 1 minute. Because guess what? I rescued me. I rescued me. My life is so much better. I'm on a healing journey, people. This is awesome. And so we can understand that ending the cycle of intergenerational trauma was the key for me to start my healing journey. So self-preservation as part of it, it helped to give me voice. You know, I felt like for once, I'm not going to be silent anymore, and I'm going to share my story. And I think the most beautiful thing is in 2018, when I did my first video to do with my toxic family and my jealous siblings and sharing what was going on and that I went no contact. And I didn't know how people would respond on YouTube. I had no idea. But just like that, those videos became my #1 YouTube videos. I am just blown away by how many hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. I mean, gosh, by now it might be thousands of people. I mean, there are so many comments, it's hard for me to keep up, especially with the videos from 3 years ago. But it is just a breath of fresh air. It's just so validating to have so many people join me and share their story with me. And they say, me too. Me too. My family did the same thing to me. And so many people say, wow, Dana, your family sounds just like my family. And so I can really relate to that. And I thank you for joining me and sharing your own experiences. So if you grew up in a toxic family, have the courage to break your devastating legacy. It doesn't have to be this way. You can be the change. It takes courage, but you can be the positive change in the future generations. So turn your pain into determination to end the dysfunctional patterns. Be the brave soul who breaks the abusive cycle of intergenerational trauma. And so your new motto is, it stops here with me. And so your children and your grandchildren and your future generations, they're going to thank you someday because they deserve better, just like you deserved better. Your children, your grandchildren, and your future generations, oh, how they deserve to be treated with love, gentleness, respect, and tender loving care. So share with me, do you have a toxic family legacy? What do you believe is part of your legacy? Do you have a narcissistic mother, father, grandparents, or siblings? How are you doing? Did you go gray rock? Did you go full no contact? How are you healing? How are you managing the roller coaster of emotions? So these are really great questions. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with me. I read every one of them and I try so hard to respond to all of you. There's only one of me and there's so many of you. So thank you for your patience. Like my videos, subscribe to my channel, share your stories, and you could visit me at danaarcuri.com. Thank you and have a beautiful day.